celebrated. Let's do all this crazy stuff and it helps us repair things. So we're AirToyz Ultralight Aviation. We're also AirToyz Adventure Ranch, which is located on Red Dry Lake, half hour north of Kingman, Arizona. So we got 130 acres of really nice. Our field's like 4 times this size. So and it's all smooth and hard packed. So, and we're going to do glider maintenance and repair today. So Mickey's going to start off with the repair parts, and we have a demo wing. It's a used up wing that got damaged, and it was too old to make it worth repairing. So we have that to show off now on what could be repaired, and then Mickey's going to maybe do a couple little patches on it, show you guys how to apply patches. You have to excuse Mickey, she has a hard time projecting her voice, and she's has a problem with high altitude. So
the only time I can project my voice really good is if I'm really mad at him. So today's good, so I'm quiet. So I will do the best I can.
Do we have any high wind kiting specialists? Anybody who doesn't mind kiting in the higher winds? Mo?
Sure, I can do it.
You want to do a kite for us on this chopped up wing?
I could do that.
So I want to be able to show people how badly it's chopped up. It'll be easier to do it with it in the air. So, can you help get it on the back?
Do you have a harness, or do I just hand kite it?
No, it's hand kiting.
I don't know how to do that.
All you got to do is pull.
Back to the basics.
Yeah, I kind of thought we were fighting on that.
So you guys probably have to step out from underneath the canopy to see it, but then we'll wad it back up and bring it back in here after we're done.
It's caught.
This wing was, I think this was a prop strike, so it's pretty chopped up. I had already done previous repairs on this wing, and he just didn't want to do anything further on it. It really wasn't, it was getting a little old, so it wasn't really worth it. And so when he pulls it up, you should be able to, hopefully if we get some wind now, you'll be able to see what was damaged on it pretty easily.
It's been windy all day, now it's
I
dead.
know, it just died.
It knows.
It's just amazing how that happens.
There we go. You guys want to come out and see it, take a look at from underneath it.
Oh wow, yeah.
I'm on the upper canopy and some point up.
Like new. Living out.
From above, it's
Some
good.
of the interior issues.
This side?
So if it were a newer wing that had
Hey Mo, bring then
it would be worth going to the
Did
trouble.
you want to get it on film?
one more time if you don't mind.
Hey, can you run a little faster with that, Mo?
Yes, sir.
Just show you a little more up close and get all that.
It kites well.
Yeah.
Is that repairable?
Yes, it is. Actually, that would only be a medium-sized repair.
How many points do I get if I get you through?
Awesome. Good job. Nice.
Going on. This is all fixable. And this is all fixable.
Wow.
It takes a lot of work and it's a little costly, but I can fix it.
This is actually a medium-sized repair.
Yeah, this is actually a relatively easy fix. The only thing I can either recreate the logo using ripstop nylon, or you can get a new logo if you need. But some people just skip the logo entirely. They just want the wing working. So, like I said, this is fixable. What I would do, say, let's look at this one here. I would probably cut it right here and right up here. And I would take all these seams apart and create well, I'd go higher because there's a rip there, and create a new piece of fabric. So it would have one more seam across. I may even go down to the leading edge so there's only one seam. And I would do that on each of these. This one would go all the way down to here, and I would probably cut it about here. So I would do that on each of these.
Those are called partial panels, when we don't go from tail to nose. So.
And this interior section, I would take out from about here. I would replace all of this interior and create whole new fabric for it. And so this, anything that's damaged like this, I'm not going to patch it and sew it. I'm going to put a whole new piece in. So anyway, this is fixable, but this would be probably over $1,000.
I think it was 1150.
11 something, yeah. And this wing, the porosity wasn't good enough to make it worth it. So he decided to just donate it in retirement. So that's the first thing we look at. When I get a job like this in, we check the porosity because we want to see if that canopy is even worth fixing. You know, if it's gonna be in the range where it's only maybe got 100 hours left on it, you're not gonna want to put that kind of money into it.
Unlike some of the other service places in the country, we will not try and talk you into fixing it if there isn't enough life on it to make it worth it. So you can buy a used glider for half the price of a new one, and if it has less than half the life left in it, something like this, you're better off just buying either a different used glider or a whole new glider. So also this is a Spider, this is ultralight, and the ultralight gliders only last about half as long as the standard weight gliders. So like with Ozone, standard weights are the Roadster and the Speedster, and the lightweights, ultralights are the Scirocco and the Spider. So those will have like a 300-hour life, and the standard weights will have 600-700 hour life. So just something to think about when you're buying gliders. Ultralight will come up a little bit easier, but once they're overhead, they fly exactly the same. They're the exact same wings, the exact same lines. These are made out of lighter fabric. So, and they'll cost you just as much. You get half the life. So
the other thing I wanted to talk about today, say we had a wing like this, right? But say this was the only hole we had. That's it. That was the hole on the whole wing. That was the only hole. This can have a patch. It's not ideal, but normally with our policy is in our shop, if it's 3 inches or less, we can offer that we can patch it. If it's more than 3 inches, we're going to replace that whole panel.
seam.
Yeah, or if it's on the seam, because sometimes, let's see if I can find one on a seam here. There's not. Okay, say something like this. Say if this is close to the seam, I would take the seam apart, put a double-sided patch that would run all the way into the interior section, and then sew it back together. When it's on the seam, I generally will not go across the seam with a patch. I don't like to do that. There is one exception to that. And that exception is sometimes when people fly these on tarmac or on pavement or on anything that's abrasive, this will get damaged right along this rod on the leading edge. It'll just shred it. It'll tear it up. If you drag this across, say, a tarmac at an airport, it'll get abrasive damage almost immediately, especially on these lightweight wings. And the only fix I have for that at this time is to put a patch over it. I do long oblong patches, oval patches, and I put them on the inside and the outside if needed. However, if that rip is like this big, I'll want to replace that panel. So I have had wings come in, brand new wings, first time out. They flew it at an airport, and almost every single area like this got abrasive damage, got holes. And that it actually almost destroyed the wing. I patched it, but it will never have value again. So
it only
totally
has value
lost
to
its
the
value.
original owner, who's willing to live with it like that,
But the resale value just plummeted at that point. So if you ever have to fly in an area like that, try to launch your glider off the grass or off anything that's not tarmac, because that will just eat it.
If the grass is wet and muddy, just set your wing on it, and then you can be on the pavement so you don't slip and stuff, you know. And that way, and when you come into land at the side of the pavement and drop it down into the grass. So that's the worst thing that we see, is horrifying when you get a brand new wing that comes in, you know, 10 hours or less, and it's got $2,000 worth of damage on the leading edge. You know, the only way to patch it, the only way to fix it reasonably, is to put those patches on it, and then it's never the same after that. You know, it's just got a heavy front end. You know, it makes the leading edge heavier, and your value. You know, nobody wants to buy a wing that's got patches, all along the leading edge. You know, so they become worthless except to the original owner at that point.
So I was coming back to this, something like this I could patch. I would offer you a choice on this. So I can double patch this, and these are the patches we use. We cut them on a machine, so they're nice ovals or round.
Yeah, you guys can pass that one around.
You never want to have pointy edges, corners on your patches, because they'll peel up, they'll get dirt under them, and they'll even pull the fabric underneath. If they get caught on something, they'll destroy it even more. So if you do have to patch in the field, always round the corners on your patches. You know, if you want to be able to fly and you know you can fix it, it's not going to fall out of the sky, just round the corners on the patches.
Mickey, did you remember a napkin?
Yeah.
Okay.
So what we do is, the wings almost always have some kind of dirt or dust on them. So take a paper towel before you do a patch. Paper towel, handkerchief, whatever you happen to have, and just wipe the dirt off, because it'll make the patch stick a lot better. If it's got a lot of dust on it, it's not going to stick. It's not going to stay. So
And if
do
you're
that.
doing a double patch, you want to do the inside too.
Yeah. And what I'm going to demonstrate is, where'd that patch go? Oh. Thank you. You can use a little bit of alcohol if absolutely necessary, but keep it right in the vicinity of the patch. It's not going to hurt it on a little area, but you're not going to want to get it all over the place.
So, and it just has to be damp. You don't have to get it soft and wet. Just you know, get it wet and then squeeze all the drops out
So I don't
of
know
it.
if you can see.
And you just need enough to pick up the dust.
This is an L-shaped tear, and it's kind of ragged. Normally, I wouldn't want to patch this one, but if you want to save money, it's going to be perfectly safe if it's patched. But what we want to do is get it lined up. So you can put your hand, or actually, if you have a piece of cardboard or something flat, to put underneath so that it has its shape. And you can peel your patch off. And if you have a second person helping you with this, it's really helpful.
Do you need a hand?
Yeah, if I can get a volunteer.
Volunteer, there you go.
Okay. If you want to, hang on. Yeah, peel that part free. I can keep the wind from messing me up here. And normally I go across. So what I'm going to want to do is put that on there. And I don't want crinkles in the patch. I don't want it to be all crinkly and having creases in it. Then what I can do is go underneath.
But you go for the leading edge on, because they wouldn't have
Okay,
that.
yeah. Right. So you can pull it out from the leading edge, pull it inside out. And I would put a double patch on this. I'm not going to on this one because it's a disposable wing.
So normally anything over a 1/4 inch, you want to put a double patch on it so that the backside doesn't collect a whole bunch of dirt. Because otherwise, if you have a 1/2 inch hole and you just put a patch on one side, it'll hold perfectly fine, but it'll collect dirt on there and you'll have an ugly little black 1/2 inch hole eventually,
So
or spot eventually.
You can see I didn't get this exactly. Ideally, this would all be lined up and these squares would match, but this will work.
So a clipboard, or we use clipboards a lot. We use embroidery hoops. You buy these little hoops at Walmart and the craft stores and stuff, and they're 2 parts, and you pinch the material in between, you put the other one on top, and then tighten it down, and you can get all the wrinkles out, and that'll hold it. If you got to do it by yourself, Mickey uses them all the time. I use them all the time whenever I do one that's bigger than 1 inch. The 1 inch ones, if you've got pinholes, they're really easy to apply. Super easy. You just lay them on there, spread them with your thumbs, and you're done.
But then if you do the back of this, and on one like this, you're going to want to put a patch on the back too, because otherwise you'll get dirt and debris in there right away.
Yeah.
So you'll lay your other patch on top, and you can work out as many wrinkles as you can. If you have any, try not to have any. Like I said, have somebody help you to try not to do that, and then put the patch there. And then you got the double-sided patch, and because they're round, it's going to hold for a long time. It may even hold for the life of the wing.
Well, usually the worst thing that happens is they'll get dirt around the edges of them eventually after a few seasons, and you'll be able to, when you're kiting it, you'll be able to see the ring of the patch.
One thing that does happen though, if you do have to do a field patch, and if you go over a seam, and then you decide later that you actually want a permanent fix, you want it repaired properly. If you put on a patch that goes like way over here on the seam, that's good. I can't see what's going on underneath it. So, and I usually cannot pull that patch up without hurting the fabric underneath it, especially if it's been adhered for a long time, especially this kind of fabric. This stretches really easily. So if you have to put across the seam, don't go quite so far, because otherwise I may end up having to replace both of these panels on each side of the seam, when initially only one was damaged.
Would it be okay to leave it if you already did it over the seam, like with the tape?
As far as not fix it ever?
Yeah.
Yeah, as long as it's holding and it's not falling apart, check it a lot, make sure doesn't have debris and dirt underneath it, because it'll kind of work in there gradually sometimes.
Because it's a seam.
Yeah,
Right.
it'll travel from the seam from both ends, and eventually you get a black line there.
Yeah.
It's just visual though, it doesn't affect how it holds.
This kind of fabric actually takes a patch really well.
Yeah.
And it'll hold it really well. There are some fabrics that don't. So,
Avcos are difficult to patch because they use that silicone-based UV protectant. Most of the other brands patch pretty easy.
So basically, that's what I do. And if you, like say you have this goes all the way up, almost. If you want to spend money, I can do the whole thing and make it look brand new. But most people opt to have the partial panel with the extra seam across. It's not really going to hurt the value of the wing because it's a permanent repair.
Give them a price range on.
Generally, when I do a partial panel, it's somewhere between 80 and 140 per foot. And it kind of depends on if I have tabs that I have to take apart and put back together, that adds to the cost. And leading, if I have to recreate the leading edge, that adds to the cost. So if it's in the middle where there's no extra layers underneath and there's no tabs, then you're looking at 80 to 140.
And that's why most people opt for the partial panels, because there's another 3.5 feet of good material there that you're basically just throwing away. Try $300 or $400 to make it look new again. Now, if your glider's got 5 hours on it, and you tear 2 cells, it may be worth doing that. Most people plan on keeping the glider for the lifetime of it, and it's not really worth it then. The 2 extra seams they're almost invisible, So.
And I have a really, really good selection of fabric, so I can usually match the colors and the type of fabric. Every once in a while, I don't have it. I can either order it, or you can go with if I have something that's real close. Especially if it's a smaller section, it's not going to hurt anything to have a little bit different fabric. But I'll try to match the colors, and I'll try to make it as aesthetically pleasing as I possibly can.
That's usually just a time factor, because we can order any fabric that we need.
But if you want it done quickly, sometimes it's not going to look identical. And sometimes there's even differences in the batches of the material of the dye lots. So I can't guarantee it's going to be 100% match every time. So basically, that's it. Anybody got any questions?
Where'd you learn to do this?
I learned from Michelle Danielle, we both did, Paramotor City Glider Shop. We bought the glider shop from Michelle. She kept the lines in a day part, And we trained in Albuquerque with her for almost 2 years before we moved back to Arizona. And she was trained by the European glider
Swing
manufacturers, by Swing.
by the leader of the swing glider.
At that time, she was partners with Elizabeth and Eric before. So then they kind of parted ways after a while, and then Michelle had Paramotor City, and they have Paramotor. So we learned from the best, from the pioneers of the sport.
Yeah, Michelle Danielle was the very first female instructor in the United States. So, and it was back when they were flying with 90-pound machines on their backs, and
Michelle's like this tall.
yeah,
so.
she's like 5 foot, like 95 pounds. So, and she was one of the premier instructors in the country when it was her and Eric DeFore and one other guy back in the late 90s.
So, anybody else? Any questions? Any concerns? Anything?
No?
Your turn.
All right, can you spin it around the other way, or bring it so the risers over this way? Actually, you know what? Take it out and then bring the lines back over this way. Change out of.
You want it turned around?
Yep. Lighter out there, and the lines stretch out. Right side. All right, so probably almost all of you have at some point nicked a line or something. The outer sheathing is only there for UV protection. It does not carry any weight whatsoever. So you can damage the outer sheathing as long as your inside sheathing is still 90% or better quality, that you know it doesn't have too many frays on it. You can still fly it that day and stuff. What happens is the core doesn't have any UV coating at all, and when you expose that core to the sun for 15 or 20 hours of flight, it goes from having maybe 90% of its strength to having 40 or 50% of its strength. So you can fly a weekend on a damaged line and then give us a call and we'll make you up a new line for $20, includes the shipping, and that's a lot better than trying to tape over it or do anything like that. Or even worse, tying them together. When you tie them together, if you get a broken line and you tie them together, you're changing the profile of your wing. And especially on A lines, you're reducing the safety by a large factor. So. Now, as far as changing lines are not that difficult. On most gliders have the steel malleons, and all you do is take a wrench and open that malleon up. This one has the soft links, so you need some kind of either small needle nose pliers, or I use brown nose jewelry pliers. So you can get these at Walmart or Michael's craft store, or any place where they sell crafts or sewing equipment. So if anybody has soft links and wants to come up and see how I do these, you can come on up and gather around. Nobody has soft links? I should have brought a different glider for this part. So I loosen up the main loop. And then you got to shove the tab through that loop. And hopefully this one will cooperate with me. Sometimes they're difficult. Some shops charge more if you have soft links, and I just average it all out, but they can be a pain in the butt sometimes. Like this stuff.
Yeah, I guess we should have
to think about that. I'll tell you what, does anybody have a glider with that they want to offer up for me to take a line off and put it back on?
Do you have new lines?
What's that?
Do you have a new line?
No, I'll just take off what's there and put it back on. So anybody got a glider available short? Alright, I'll keep messing with this. Sometimes these can take 10 minutes or so. Alright, hardest part is just getting that tap through the first time. So, since nobody has soft links, I want to explain all this part of it. Or does yours have soft links?
I don't think so. Would it be?
Okay, so that part on any other glider has the metal triangle. That's your malleon.
Oh, that one.
And
Also, back.
oh yeah, I could have done that one. Yep. All right. So let's say you got to replace your inside A main. So that's this one here, going up to your center of your wing. And what we're going to do is go up to this first cascade. And you're going to take it about 1/4 inch on each side, and you're going to wiggle them together, and now loosen everything up. Now, this is called a sister knot or figure 8 knot that these are put together. And I will, whoever wants to come up close and watch how I put it back together afterward, can come up and see that. So here's your new line that you're going to put on. You want to make sure that both sides are clear and not twisted up. And then we're going to open up our loops a little bit because they always get squished down. And now I'm going to stack the inside one on top of the outside one. I'm going to take my new line. I'm going to go over the top of those two. And there may be 3 or there may be 4 depending on what line you're replacing. And now, so I got my 2 loops and my single loop that went over it. Now I'm going to go all the way back to my other side of the line, and I'll put that through those 2 loops.
Does it matter from which side?
I do it from back to front, and it does, but it does not really matter. It's just a matter of which side your knot is flopped on. So, in the overall scheme of things, unless you were a slalom racer or something like that, it doesn't make any difference at all. So there's my sister knot again. So pull those tight, and you can put a little tension on your new one, and then pull and pull. So your outside one was the bottom of your stack, and that's going to be the bottom of the knot if you put it from the outside to the inside. And so you're going to pull that one tight first, and then pull your inside one, and that makes a nice little stack. And I would encourage some of you to come up here and look close, so that you can do this in the future if you have to order a line. Sister knot, you take your new one and you put it over the top of those 2. I'll take it apart again so you guys can see. So I got my 2. I'm going to take my first one, open that up a little bit. I'm going to open up the inside one a little bit. So I'm going to take my outer and my inner, stack the inner on top. And I'm always working from the inside of the lines to the outside of the glider.
I'm so sorry we forgot your lines.
Then I'm going to take the new line and go over the top of those 2, and I'll just pinch it in my fingers like that. Go to my other end and put that through the 2 loops.
Do you prefer outside in?
Outside in, because I'm working on the inside, and that's just the way it seems easiest.
Okay.
So, and then once you have them together, now you could go ahead and just leave it like this loose, and you could take off, and it'll cinch up tight when you start flying.
Okay.
So, but I like to pre-tension them. I'll pull that outer one because it's the lower loop, and then the outside one. And now you see they're stacked perfectly. So if one's flipped over the top of the other, like so, see how now they're one's going over the top of the other one.
Yeah.
That will add friction as you're flying, and it'll wear the line out faster than it would if you got them stacked perfectly. Now it's not a significant amount, but you know, every little bit counts when we're trying to get as much life out of our gliders as we can.
Yeah.
So we get those two tight, and then we're ready to go.
Flip that over again. Okay, yeah, it looks cleaner on that side.
And then on the regular Malian, and I'm going to go ahead and take this one apart and just show you how to do the O-rings. All right, so if you don't have to take all the lines off, you'll still have one twist in your O-ring. So if you're just taking off the inside line, you take that off, and you still got the same twist there. So you don't have to mess with that at all. If you have to take them all off, and your O-ring's hanging like this, what you're going to do is you're going to put one twist in it, and then come up from underneath with your lines. And you do them from the outside to the inside. On most gliders, if Mac pairs are backwards, Mac pairs go from the inside to the outside. And it's easier if you can hang your risers on a nail in the garage or something like that. Makes it a little easier to work on them. Okay, now to finish up your O-ring, you put another half twist going the same direction that you went the first time, and then slip it over the top of the screw.
Wow.
And now you'll see that both sides of the O-ring are going underneath this side of it. Now it's not that big of a deal. If you twist it the other way, if you twist it the other way, oh, this way, oh, that's the way it went. There we go. If you twist it the other way, you'll see it just looks kind of funky. So one's going underneath and one's going over the top of the front piece. So in racing, they would, you know, if a slalom racer, they would be upset if I did that and left it that way because it cuts down the aerodynamics a little bit. So they might even be picky about which side the front crossover was on, whether it was on the front or the back. You know, maybe it's all just their sense of luck or something like that or whatever. I don't think it makes a whole lot of difference. And I've seen factory gliders come in with those twisted opposite directions. So when it's done right, it looks like three horseshoes. So, now the next thing you always want to have is some Loctite on these. So if you have inserts, then you don't need the Loctite because the inserts hold the nut from being able to spin. But if all you have is O-rings, I use Loctite 248 as a paste, but you can use the liquid also. You can use the blue so that you can't get them off again. You don't want the red because the red locks it in and makes it almost impossible to get the nut loose again. So, and you just put a little dab of it on the threads. Put it back down.
Is that something that you sell as the inserts? Can we add those to wings or?
Most of the inserts are factory special things.
Okay.
So I have some used ones that I've collected from dead gliders and things like that. So if you're just missing one or two and it comes in for inspection, I will replace them with what I have.
Gotcha.
If I don't have the right ones, I'll put O-rings on it. You can mix and match, it really isn't that big of a deal. So when you're tightening up your nut, you just want to give it a couple of fingers. So get it finger tight and then just a couple of fingers. I'm not putting very much on it at all. So if you crank it really tight, it'll actually strip and go through all the way the other way because it's a barrel nut. So You don't want that to happen. So that's ready to go right there again. I'm gonna put the soft link back on now. Find my other line here. So, and I always want to make sure that I have my inner and my outer in the right places. That's my outer. Outer's going to go first. And you cannot do these soft links without one of these tools, the jewelry pliers. So I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to make a half twist my O-ring. Bring my loop up. Put it through the tail of the soft link. Get my inside line. I'll make sure it's still clear. Biggest mistake I see with people who put their own lines on is they'll crisscross. They'll put an A on and get it underneath the B's, or they'll put a B on and get it over the top of the A's or something like that. And then they'll send it to me saying it doesn't fly right. And then I'll just have to correct that one little mistake.
And we have had one come in recently with damage because he put the lines on wrong.
Yeah.
So, yeah, be really careful about that.
So you can always, if you don't feel comfortable with it, you can always send the glider to us. It'll just cost you a little bit more to do it that way. Okay, so I got my same horseshoe on there, triple horseshoe, and I'll slide that all the way up. The tail has to go through the riser again on the back side of the tab. And then you have to go through your O-rings and both lines. Open it up and grab your tail and hold really tight and pull that tail through all those lines. A little bit tighter. And the loop is the soft link has a loop on the tail. You put your jewelry pliers through that, and then you get your tab and grab the tip of your tab and start pulling it through that loop. That's all back together, and then we just tension it up to get everything even again. Okay, that's back together. So let's change the line. Anybody got any questions about that?
Yeah, is it the same method for if it's one of the higher lines?
One of the upper lines, yeah. You still have to take the part down here, and then you'll take that main off, and take that all the way off and set it off to the side, and then go up to your upper one or mid one, and you'll take it apart at the next cascade.
Gotcha.
And then you just got to make sure you're not letting them get tucked underneath other lines and stuff
Keep
like
the same
that.
order.
Yeah, if you're doing B lines, take all your A's and kind of flop them over the top of your glider, and try and roll it up so just your B's are sitting up on top, and then it makes it a little easier to tell when you just got your B's and you're not actually winding them through each other. Now it'll still fly that way, and it's not going to even fly funny or anything. But what'll happen is those lines will saw against each other. Eventually, it'll cut through your sheathing. So, and open that up. Now, I heard there were some people who were interested in detangling. Is there anybody interested in how we detangle? Has anybody ever got their lines tangled up? Never?
Yeah,
Well, I didn't volunteer to tangle lines for me, so I can't cheat. You want to come up and do it? Okay, just toss it up. Oh, not over the top.
Oh, sorry. See, I did it wrong already.
Toss it in the middle of the lines that are still there. Toss it in the middle of the lines that are still there. Okay. Now come on this side.
Okay.
And reach underneath all those lines and grab the riser and pull it through.
Grab the riser and pull it through.
Yeah. Just grab it anywhere. Yeah, pull it through. Okay.
There we go.
All right.
Start the clock.
All right. Now here's the trick. Here's the big trick with tangles. It can be tangled up in any which way. And I'm sorry, that wind is giving us a lot of problems here. Can somebody pull the head of this
Sure
up?
could, yeah.
And you're going to come down and follow that down, and that's going to split into the two that go up top. Pardon the wind. Pardon the wind. All right, so we got our two coming up to the top, and we're going to find that main, and we're going to follow that down. Look at that mess. Look at that. How's that ever going to get untangled? Following that main down, and now I'm going to take everything that's around that main and throw it down on the other side of the risers. Now we can pull it back out.
Okay.
And make sure our third A is clear. Everything clear. Okay, there's our A's are clear. Now sometimes there'll still be one twist left in it, and you may have to do this to go through wherever you see the twist. But we got our A's clear. Now let's see if our B's are clear.
Now, if the B's aren't clear, would you start at this end and do the same exact thing
No,
again, or?
You only do the A. That's the only one you can do this with.
Okay.
If there's anything else going on, it'll just be a flip up here that needs to be done.
Okay.
Okay, all the B's are clear.
Mm-hmm.
Usually if the A's and B's are clear, then the C's, D's are clear. Oh, that'll help. Thank you.
Need 6 hands on a day like today.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, all those are clear. That'll mean the D's are clear. Make sure they're not wrapped up in the brakes.
So
Brakes
that
are
looked
still
pretty
on
bad
the
at the
ground.
beginning.
There you go.
It looked pretty bad at the beginning.
Make sure it's detangled.
It took you like 2 minutes.
We've had some come in that were unbelievable.
All you gotta see if they're all clear. Not much wind there, Jeff. Look at that, they're all clear. Now those ones you see through is a tip light is not connected. Throwing the risers through the lines like 5 or 6 times with one of my students because they didn't believe me. They thought it was just some trick, you know, for just one tangle, you know. So no, you can. I'll turn my back and you tangle it up as bad as you want. And now it gets a little more complicated if you got both sides that are tangled. First, you got to try and figure out which riser is going through the lines on the other side, and then clear that out. But if you stretch it out on a calm day, that's easy enough to do.
Thank you, Mo.
Or in a garage, or backyard where it's protected from the wind, that kind of thing. So that's about what I got. Anybody got any questions?
Yeah, if let's say you're out in the field and you just you rip a line and you happen to have an extra line with you, is there a quick way to measure it?
Yes.
So,
What a lot of manufacturers will send you a 1-loop line as a spare. It'll be marked spare line, and that will have 1 loop and then 1 open end, and it'll be longer than any other line on your glider. And if you damage your line out in the glider, you have to land out in the field and you're 20 miles from home or whatever, then you can isolate the one that's broken, and you can either take that off and lay it on the ground and then lay your new one out alongside of it and tie a knot in it. The kind of knot you want to tie is where you take the ends like this and go through and do a half hitch on the. Let me get further down here. So you're gonna make a big loop like this, and you're gonna do a half knot. You're just gonna take that tip with the loop and go through, and you're gonna make that kind of knot. That's the least amount of tension in the lines. The reason they don't tie knots and they sew the lines instead of tying knots is because knots will reduce your strength by 10 to 15%. So right off the bat. So these lines are rated for a certain amount of strength for each different size line, and whether they're single braid or double braid inside. And if you have knots, that'll take it from being a 100% line to an 85 to 90% line, just tying the knot in it. So now lines are good down to 50%. So some manufacturers even allow down to 40%, but 50% is minimum in my shop. And we do that on a force meter. We actually take the original line, make a copy, and then we break the original line during an inspection so that we know what the percentage is. If the percentage is at 55%, it's still going to pass, but I'm going to tell you, you're going to need new lines before next season, you know. And if it's at 65%, it's still got plenty of life in it. So a lot of times they'll come down when they're brand new, they might be 110, 120%. After 50 hours, they're going to be down to 80%. Another 50 hours, they're going to be down in the 70s or 60s. And then they'll just sit there for several hundred hours in that range. And then all of a sudden, they'll go from 60 down to 52 in one season. So this just seems to be the way. Mostly the Edelrid and Lyros lines are the most common lines that the manufacturers use. And both those brands of lines do that.
So where do you make that knot? On the broken line?
Yeah, you would have just a cutoff line here that they give you, and it doesn't have a loop sewn into it. Just sewn on one end and not the other, so you can make your knot wherever you need to. And then if you're out in the field, you just leave a slack hanging off of it. And if you have the tools, you can cut that and shorten it up so there's not as much to tangle with the other lines. So when you're launching, so
what do you measure it against? How do you get that length?
like I said, you can, if it's calm, you can lay out the old line.
Oh, okay.
This is the quickest way to do it. Is just take the broken line and take both the halves and lay them out,
Okay.
and then find a stick in the ground or something, you know, like this. You could take and put that in, and put the broken loop over that, and your new loop over that, and then stretch them out. And just all you have to do is get within an inch or so, and the glider will fly. You know, if it's just one line. So
Could you measure it against?
the best way to do it is take the opposite side off and find something to hook that on, and actually put some tension on them. So they're supposed to have 11 kilograms of tension when we measure them in the shop, or excuse me, 5 kilograms of tension, which is 11 pounds. So I judge it. I use a small screwdriver when I'm making lines, and I'll put the loop through here, and then my new one that I'm making, I stretch it again from against the wall on my hook on the wall, and I have them both stretched out, and I'll pull until I got 2 fingers where my knuckles are turning white, and that's right around that 11-pound point. And then I'll loop it over and hold it and make my mark on it, and then I'll take it over to the sewing machine and sew my new loop in it. So, yeah, that's as far as it goes with emergency. If you have to, and it's not an A line, you can tie a knot in them, but you're going to lose 2 inches doing that, and you're going to have a little pucker in your glider. But if it's a matter of having to walk 20 miles home or fly 20 miles home, then I'd go for that, you know, and then I'd just replace it as soon as possible. So you can call us up anytime. We don't advertise it in 24 hours, but I make them the next day after you pay for them. So I'll send you an invoice, you pay for them, and I make them the next day. I send them UPS 3-day ground. So most of the country can get your lines in 4 days. So. The other thing I wanted to talk to you guys about, I was hoping some more experienced guys were here, but I see gliders that have been sitting out here in the sun all day long, out in front of these trailers. That's really bad for your gliders. Now, what kills gliders is the loss of their UV coatings. That's what shortens their life. So every minute they're out in the sun, whether they're in a bag or not, the heat makes the UV coating soft, It's not soft enough that you can feel it, but it softens up the molecules. It loosens them up, makes them looser. And the way UV coating works is UV rays come down and they hit the surface, and the UV coating sheds an electron to reflect the UV ray. And so every time, all the time it's out in the sun, all this time it's been out there, there's electrons flying off of this UV coating. So it has billions and billions of electrons in that UV coating, but eventually it wears out. That's where we do the porosity check. And that is measuring how fast the air can move through the material. A given amount of air moves through the material. And the thicker your coating is, the longer it takes for it to suck that air through. And the less coating there is, the faster it'll go through. So, yeah.
What about the wings and the stuff sacks? What's your take on that?
The stuff sack, what you're getting is you're getting hot. So they're not seeing sun, but they're getting hot. And that loosens up those molecules in the UV coating. And then when you do take it out to fly, your UV coating isn't as tight and locked down as it was. And it sheds even more electrons faster. So we've seen gliders that have been sitting in storage for 10 or 15 years in a shop, in a glider shop. You know, I got one a couple years ago that was at Torrey Pines Glider Park. They had it sitting on the shelf for like 16 years. It was still in the original packaging. It had been in air conditioning all that time. But when I tested it, it had crap porosity. It was worn out, and it had never been unfolded. And so no matter what you do, they're going to shed electrons. So the hotter you get them, the faster it sheds electrons. The more sun they see, even faster. So the best thing you can do is put them in a dark closet inside air-conditioned space, and that's going to give you the maximum amount of life out of them.
It's kind of like a wax or sealant on the paint of a car, right?
Yes, exactly.
The same scenario.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So yeah, storage. Keep them out of the sun as much as possible. If you have to have them outside of the flying or something, move them throughout the day and keep them in the shade, and that'll at least lower the temperature. And you know, you spend 5 days out here sitting in the sun like that, and you're going to lose probably 40 or 50 hours off the life of that glider. So, and when your glider only lasts 600, 700 hours to start with, that's a lot of time. So.
Awesome. Thank you, Drew.
No problem. No problem.
Appreciate it.
Appreciate you guys.
So,